I'm Alex. I use they, them pronouns, and today we're going to be talking about Year One by Nora Roberts. Where do we fucking start? Year One by Nora Roberts was published in 2017. I was recommended this book about a bajillion times when The Rise of Magics came out, which was, I believe, 2019. It might have been 2020. I don't remember 2020. So, and I dug it. I did dig it. I gotta say, this was my first step into Nora Roberts, and I thought it was a fun step. It was a safe step for me. I'm an avid fantasy sci-fi reader, so I was like, okay, let's do something safe for Alex. Nora Roberts writes exceptionally concisely and clearly, and that doesn't sound like a very good compliment, but considering how hard that is, I need to give credit where credit is due. Like, genuinely very direct book. It has a lot of characters involved, and all of them were pretty easy to like keep track of. I didn't feel overly confused, and I didn't feel like the plot was overly muddled, which is choice. Honestly, my critiques are more like comments. This book really made me think about my role in the apocalypse, and specifically in this apocalypse. Now, this book was like a little bit too apropos for the situation. It's a pandemic, and it kills a huge chunk of the population, and I was just like, oh my god. But this pandemic like begins with a bird. Okay, so I believe, is there a prologue or is this just chapter one? Hold on, I gotta fact check. Okay, yeah, so chapter one opens up with like this Scottish family, who has roots in Scotland, and they are on vacation, and these brothers go out hunting, and one of the brothers shoots, this is like, I'm trying to draw this in, one of the brothers shoots a bird into a magic circle, and that is what begins the apocalypse. I'm hoping that somewhere along the lines in this trilogy this makes more sense, because I get that no one knows what the fuck actually happened. I hope that somewhere along the line someone does, because I don't fucking know how one bird in a magic circle, in Scotland no less, where there are probably hundreds of thousands of magic circles, is going to cause a whole illness to happen and also give other people magic powers. I don't know, so maybe let me know if like Of Blood and Bone like really just nails that one on the head and makes everything make sense. So, this book focuses on a pretty large cast, and it's about everybody individually figuring out what the fuck is going on and then coming together and making a community in Virginia? I shouldn't make hard claims like this. I think it's Virginia. I don't know. There are some normies, so there are normal people, and then there are people who are struck with magic powers. And some of the people who were struck with magic powers like kind of had magic powers before all this started, and some of them just kind of like acquired it or like became a new species. Now that's another thing where I'm a little bit like, I hope that's explained more in other books, because were they always secretly a fairy and they just didn't know? I'm not sure how you don't notice that. So I assume they were turned into a fairy via the bird, the not bird flu. I know you can't see it, but my cat, Rosie, is just prowling around. She does not like that I'm talking to you guys right now. They all come together, and one of the biggest questions that this book had me asking myself was, what could I do in the apocalypse to be any way useful? And I think I speak for a good chunk of people. And if you're not one of these people, then like power to you. But like, I've spent the majority of my life leveling up my like intelligence stats and not focusing at all on practical things. Do I know the mechanics of changing a tire? Yes. Have I ever changed one? No. So like practical skills, I don't hunt. I guess I like sew, but like I'm more of a knitter. Like it gets muddled. I don't think that I would have a very good asset to bring to a posse if I didn't have magic powers. But then depending on the magic powers, like seems like a bad thing to depend on during the apocalypse, you know? Like I don't want to have to be like, God, I hope I turn into an elf or something so that I actually have something to bring to the table. Because I really have nothing to bring to the table except for an extreme knowledge of Latin and I read a lot of books. I don't know if books exist too much in the apocalypse, so but that was really the main question, and I enjoyed that Nora made me go there. It was uncomfortable, and I think adding the magical influence into an apocalypse situation is pretty crisp. It gives people like me hope that we won't just lay down and die when the world decides to crumble before us. This book gave me a lot of anxiety, mainly surrounding the babies. Now, whenever twins are born, or whenever like babies are born in a weird situation, you know they're gonna be magical. Like I know all these babies are gonna be magic babies. But there was something so viscerally terrifying about like, you know, people getting pregnant during the apocalypse. And like on one hand, like I know that like it's not anyone's fault that you, well, it's not your fault that your pregnancy aligned with the apocalypse. Like how are you supposed to know that 9 months from now that your husband's gonna die as well as both of your parents, and then you're gonna have to give birth in a hospital that has no OBGYN, and then like an EMT is gonna give birth to you, or gonna like help you birth your babies. You don't know that going in. So like, fine, that's cool. But from my perspective, now everything that they did was like important. Like, you know, we gotta move these 2-day-old babies because it's the apocalypse and we're in New York City. Like I was like, absolutely, yes. But then, like, you're moving 2-day-old babies. Like it's just, and like, thank fuck, like, see, I was born a premature baby, and I almost died. I almost died, and my mom almost died during my birth process. And, you know, every time that someone has to give birth in like huge, like dramatic situations, the babies are always like a pretty swimming birth, you know? Like these are twins, exceptionally healthy, no problems, like no breech baby, no emergency C-section. Like it is like the smoothest birth you can possibly have because everything else is going to shit. And as somebody who didn't have a smooth birth during like the normal times, I'm always like, is this realistic? Like for once, I just want to see a baby be born in a shitty situation and like not come out perfect. Like be like, hey, you fucked. I mean, then the baby would die. So like, I get it, but it's also like, really? I think this was almost extra, like, I thought it was bad, and then the end birth scene was worse. So like, gotta look up these fuckers' fucking names, because they all fucking... Lana and what is her dude's name? Not Max. Don't talk about Max. Simon. So she walks in on Simon reading essentially like what to expect when you're expecting, or like giving birth for dummies. I can't remember the exact title that Nora gave us. And he doesn't even finish the book, guys. He doesn't even finish the fucking book. And then her water breaks, of course, and then he has to give birth to this baby in their house. And I get that this is like a prophesized birth. I get that this is obviously a supernatural experience, but like it was almost too supernatural. It was almost ridiculous how easy this birth was, considering that the mother had fucking walked like hundreds of miles on foot. No, like very bad nutrition, very bad diet in the middle of the apocalypse, And you're telling me that this baby comes out pink and rosy and not premature and not sick and that everything's good and that all Simon had to do was just like boop and the baby like fell into his hands. Like even the like pain of the labor didn't seem as extreme as it could have been. Like, I think the labor was like 8 hours or something. Now, I'm not saying that 8 hours of labor isn't fucking hellish, but what a lucky bitch is Fallon and Lana to have such a nice birth in somebody's fucking house. Like, there was no issues. I don't understand. I don't understand how you could have no issues after running from, like, being on the lam and then your baby still comes out fine. I get it. She's a magical baby. But, like, really? Like, even this, because this just felt like a little Deus Ex Machina-y for me. Like, I was like, she can have a hard birth and still be a prophesized baby. I don't know why we're afraid of having hard births. Another thing that I have a question about, and once again, please don't get mad at me if this is all resolved at the end of the trilogy, which I'm sure that it is. But I do hope that all the characters that Nora took like 400 pages to describe to us come back in the other books. One of the things that I had assumed going into the book, so like it's called like the Chronicles of the One. Because in the beginning there was such a large cast, I had made the assumption that the One was not an individual, but rather like a group represented. Does that make sense? So I was like, oh, maybe it's like the 1% that survived the apocalypse, or the 1% that gets magic powers or something. Like, I was thinking of percentages because of the fact that we had like 20 people in this cast, and I was dedicated to all of them. And then to have this pivot in like the last like 50 pages of the book where all of a sudden the One becomes very clearly one baby. Like, I know she was called the One before then, I know, but like very clearly becomes a singular individual. Like, this story becomes Lana's story rather than like the whole ensemble story, and then becomes Fallon's story. It kind of made me disappointed a little bit. I'm happy with fantasy tropes, obviously. Fantasy tropes are my jam, but I really was kind of looking forward to it not being necessarily a like prophesized child. And once again, Nora might flip the whole script later in. This is just my experience from reading Year One. But I'm excited to see her bring back the other characters, because I'm gonna be kind of disappointed if I had to read and care about like a whole squad of people only to care about fucking Fallon. Like, that just makes me sad. Also because like there are other like, where are the twins? Like, I'm assuming at least they are going to be important. I will say, as a gay bitch, and this is just like gay rants, you cannot tell me that a fairy named after Freddie fucking Mercury isn't a big fat lesbian. Like, the whole time I was like, oh yeah, Fred and Arliss belonged together. Like, clearly. And then, no. Once again, maybe later on in the trilogy, I get the feeling not. And I'm a little bit salty about it, because once again, you named a fairy after Freddie Mercury, and she's not gay. It just doesn't seem right. Who knows?